Hey, this is Dr. Drew, and today we're going to be talking about thyroid dysfunction, in particular Hashimoto's or hypothyroidism. So if you're out there and thyroid problems run in the family, or you're stuck on Synthroid, or you're not feeling 100% or your metabolism is off, then this is for you. And for those of you that don't know, the thyroid, a little butterfly-shaped gland right underneath your throat here, and it controls metabolism system-wide. So it's responsible for your body temperature, burning body fat, increasing your energy, making sure that you have good communication between your hormone system and generation of testosterone and estrogen and progesterone. It goes on, and needless to say, if your thyroid's not functioning at 100%, you're not functioning at 100%. So some of the common signs and symptoms of low thyroid or hypothyroidism is going to be coldness or intolerant to cold. You're gonna have fatigue and energy issues. You might have lateral third of your eyebrow starting to thin, or hair loss in general. You might have swelling and inflammation in the extremities, or maybe swelling in the throat. There might be a bogginess in the gland. If any of that sounds like you, then a full proper workup needs to be done. And what I mean by that is you can't just run a TSH and say you did a proper thyroid workup. If you're going to do a proper thyroid workup, then you need to do the following. You need to make sure you get a TSH done. You need to make sure you get a free T4 as well as a free T3 done. A reverse T3 can also be helpful because sometimes the body will sequester active T3 in the reverse T3 form. And then finally, to round off proper testing, you need to have antibodies checked. So anti-TPO or thyroglobulin antibodies are really important to check because quite often people will have normal TSH, maybe normal-ish T4 and 3, and then boom, you find these antibodies are through the roof. And so that's a diagnosis of an autoimmune thyroid, which most of them are a Hashimoto's thyroiditis. What this means is your body is mounting an immune attack against the gland, and because of that, it cannot properly put out enough thyroid hormone. Therefore, your metabolism suffers, and all those systems that the thyroid touches are also going to suffer. And remember, if you're already on medication and you're getting your thyroid monitored and checked every so often, and this goes for everyone, do not take the medication the morning of your blood draw. If you take the medication and then within an hour or two go get your blood checked, it's gonna throw the numbers all around. Also for thyroid testing, it is best to make sure that you test your thyroid free of supplements. So take 1 to 2 days, probably preferably 2 days off of your supplements, and then go get your thyroid tested. And then also for females, the time of month matters as well too. Okay, so keep in mind that the hormonal swings that you're going through each month will impact thyroid tests as well too. So trying to keep that consistent is also really important. Now, if you just want to improve your thyroid function naturally, we should talk about some lifestyle factors, some diet things, a whole bunch of cool things that you can do in order to make your metabolism run smoothly. So you have to think, okay, this gland, it pumps out thyroid hormone. What are the raw materials and things that this gland needs in order to create thyroid hormone? You need iodine, zinc, selenium, and tyrosine. These are the building blocks that help us make T4 and T3. It also helps with conversion because what you have to understand is your thyroid gland mostly makes T4, and then your body will convert a good chunk of that into T3, which is the most active thyroid hormone. It's what gives life. It's like the spark plug that goes into the cell and gives life. But too much T3 at any given time, you could feel like you're running on overdrive. So that's why it's a tightly regulated system. You have to remember too that Synthroid as a medication is just T4. So when you take just T4, you need a good converting system in order to get that T4 to T3. And guess what? A lot of people are sluggish converters. They don't have enough iodine to convert it. They have poor gut function or poor liver function, where a lot of your thyroid hormone is converted in the gut and the liver. And so if you have sluggish systems there, you're not going to be able to get that T4 to T3, which is really what you need. Also, micronutrient deficiencies will cause hypothyroidism to kick in. You sweat out a lot of iodine. We need probably a lot more than we get. It's the number one cause for thyroid dysfunction. It's just not getting enough iodine. So making sure you get fresh seafood, use a little bit of table salt here and there in conjunction with pink sea salt and white sea salt, and then look into that tart cranberry juice, the lower sugar form. Very good option for getting enough iodine. And then making sure you get the zinc and selenium and tyrosine, which comes from proteins. So high quality proteins will contain tyrosine. Boom, you have the building blocks that you need. Another big one is the avoidance of gluten. So when someone's dealing with an autoimmune thyroid, Hashimoto's, there's a thing called molecular mimicry. And what can happen is the body will take in a molecule of gluten, and your body will get confused, and it will look at your thyroid gland, and it will look similar in a sense to the gluten molecules. And instead of attacking the gluten, you can start attacking the thyroid gland. So you need to make sure that if you're going to settle down autoimmune tendency, a huge part of that is gluten avoidance. And if you don't believe me, just type gluten, Hashimoto's into PubMed, and you'll see all kinds of articles tying the two together. So this is also another segue to discuss food sensitivity testing when you're trying to settle down thyroid disease. Anything you can do to not rev your system up and settle down and dampen that immune response is a good idea, because you don't want your immune system attacking your gland. This gland is very important. You're trying to preserve it. Now, I was talking earlier about conversion, because wouldn't we love to be awesome converters? That should be a huge goal that everyone watching this has. I want to make exactly as much T4 as I need, and I want to convert 100% of whatever's needed so I have enough T3. In order to do that, you have to dampen the cortisol, stress, and adrenal responses, because in a stress state, in a fight or flight state, you don't become a good converter. And think about this: if your body thinks you're running from a saber-toothed tiger, it's not that interested in converting thyroid hormone, so it gets put to the back burner. So anytime you're treating thyroid disease or poor conversion, you need to also treat the adrenal system. And we do that with a variety of herbs. A very important one to consider is ashwagandha, because it actually modulates and brings cortisol down, and it increases T4 to T3 conversion. Other herbs to consider: ginseng, cordyceps, and then rhodiola. Also, making sure you get 8 hours of sleep each night. If the system's burned and run down, you're not going to have a good sound thyroid system, so that's pretty important. Now, mercury is an interesting one too. If you have a lot of amalgam fillings and metal within the mouth, you want to get hold of a biocompatible or biological dentist to get those safely removed. Why is that? So you can have mercury levels in the body, and that will cause issues with your thyroid gland, okay? It'll bump out nutrients within the gland, and then conversion and creation of the hormone is going to be hindered. It's also tied to a lot of autoimmune conditions, and since we're talking about an autoimmune condition with Hashimoto's, this is critical. Another thing to get rid of is fluorides and bromides. They can actually bump out iodine, and you need a lot more iodine, trust me, than fluoride and bromide. Neither of those you want a lot of in your system. Fluoride-free water and toothpaste is pretty important. Bromide's usually found in a lot of flours, and we already mentioned earlier that getting rid of a lot of gluten and flour-based products would be a smart idea. And then a last one is avoid goitrogens. So these are molecules in certain cruciferous vegetables that can also tie up your thyroid gland. So if you eat too much raw kale, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, that can actually overload your system with goitrogens, and it can depress and decrease your thyroid function. So that's one we don't want to have to deal with, okay? And then the next one we should chat about here is medication options. So the gold standard is Synthroid, which is just synthetic T4. It's usually what most people are given, and a good chunk of people do well on it. But there's also a subset of people that, like I was saying earlier, they just don't convert enough to T3, and they just still feel crappy even though their TSH is in range, or maybe there's something else up and they're just not responding to that medication. That's where we'll go into what's called desiccated or armor thyroid, and that's a combination product. It has T4 as well as T3. It also has a little bit of T1 and T2 because it's an actual like extract of thyroid tissue. Now it is standardized, so you can get the dose standardized. Don't think it's just going to be anything random. But because it gives you a bit of both, that little crumbs of a dose T3 that has within it can be really, really nice for some people, especially when you're not used to having enough T3 in your system. So can't say enough good things about it, and no one is talking about this. Most medical doctors are just like T4 or bust, and that's it. Endocrinologist, T4, that's it. They don't even discuss, offer, even touch on this other option. So I want you to know that natural desiccated thyroid is an option, and it's a wonderfully good one. So if you're struggling with thyroid issues, if what I've been talking about rings true and you feel like something deep down is going on that you haven't been able to figure out, just drop me a comment below or reach out, and I'd be happy to help, because this is one of the main systems in the body I love fine-tuning, and it is so important that everyone has this information, because if your thyroid's not functioning at 100%, you're not functioning at 100%, and that is what I want for you. You deserve to be functioning at 100%. So any questions at all, just drop them below.